This is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update video for July 28th, 7 p.m. Here's the outlook from the National Hurricane Center. They're not expecting any tropical cyclones for the next 48 hours, but there is an interesting area out in the East Atlantic that could develop over the next couple of days. Back in 1926, we had a Category 1 hurricane making landfall near Cape Canaveral, Florida on this date. Now, what makes this interesting is I've talked to some people that are other hurricane trackers and people in the weather business that have this theory about major hurricanes hitting South Florida and then being affected by weaker systems earlier in the year, such as what happened with Tropical Storm Bonnie just a few days back. And then, of course, at the height of the season, we end up getting a major hurricane hitting South Florida. This was 1926, and of course later that year we had a major hurricane come into Dade County and absolutely devastated Miami and Broward County as a Category 4 hurricane, a very large hurricane. They say if a hurricane like that hit today, the damage would be well over $100 billion. It would be a catastrophe that the insurance companies probably could not absorb. But we did have Bonnie affect us over the past few days, so we'll have to see what happens at the height of the season. But there have been quite a few other years where we had major hurricanes hit, such as 1960 with Donna and 1965 with Betsy, where there were no other systems earlier in the year that hit South Florida when those hurricanes hit. So it's not guaranteed that just because we had an early system hit South Florida that there's another one that's going to hit at the height of the season. Now, back in 1996, Caesar affected Nicaragua. This traveled right along the ABC Islands here, scraped the northern coast of South America, and then came right into Nicaragua as a Category 1 hurricane, a rare track indeed, but fairly typical for a July system, as this came in very low into the west. All right, here's the current formation probabilities for the Atlantic Basin, and you can see there's a moderate chance, maybe a 1.5 to 2% chance of the system out in the mid-Atlantic, which is not really that well organized. But this system out here near the Cape Verde Islands is the one we need to keep an eye on because this might develop down the road. Right, here is the water vapor loop of the Atlantic Basin. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's happening out there. And you can see that we have rotation in the Western Caribbean Sea. That is an upper level low. Right here we have an upper level low spinning here that is unfavorable for tropical development. This area disturbed weather has now moved into Mexico. There's no more invest. There was an invest 99L on this, but it's moved inland and it's not going to develop. Here's another wave right here that's flares up and dies down, but it's pretty much, it's not really in an unfavorable environment, but it is out in front of it. We have about 20 knots of shear out in front of this. And the long-range models indicate this is not really going to do very much as it pretty much travels west-northwest. But it's this wave out here in the East Atlantic, south of the Cape Verde Islands, that's moving off to the west. And some of the models indicate that this could develop down the road and head in the general direction of the Leeward and Windward Islands. Now, earlier today, some of the global models, the Canadian model continues to want to develop this and have it move west-northwest. The GFS is pretty much scratched in development on this, and once it gets over in the near the Antilles over here, it kind of washes it out and doesn't really do much with it. And the European model earlier today also indicated this would be a pretty significant system heading into the Caribbean Sea south of Hispaniola, and the late run this afternoon has it as a very weak system moving off like this. So right now the model data is not really strong in developing this system, but it is something we need to keep an eye on, and it wouldn't surprise me if we have a new invest on this system in the next 48 hours as it gets a little bit further west here in the Atlantic in the intertropical convergence zones. But other than that, everything else is quiet in the Atlantic Basin. All right, I wanted to make a mention that on August 1st, my guest will be Chris Hollis from TropicalAtlantic.com, and he's the creator of CaneTalk.com. He's working on some new programs as well at TropicalAtlantic.com, trying to come up with a program that can figure out all the best performing models. He's got a great recon program and a model map over at TropicalAtlantic.com that we use on the Tropical Update videos quite frequently. Well, I've had a lot of people ask me about Chris over the years, and so we decided to have Chris on. And on Sunday night, August 1st, he will be live via Skype in video on the live feed here at Hurricane City, so tune in for that. Chris Hollis from TropicAtlantic.com. Now, one more note I wanted to mention. On the last Tropical Update video, I made an error and mentioned that the 2004 hurricane season started on August 31st, and I meant to say July 31st. That was the first named storm of the 2004 season when we ended up with 17 named storms. So just a clarification on that. We are ahead of that season, and we are ahead of last year. Last year, we hadn't even had the first named storm up until now. All right, well, that's it for now. We'll be back with another update over the weekend unless we have an invest pop on the system in the East Atlantic. That's it for now. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.